Understanding aviation accidents and your rights in Florida. A private jet slams into a Florida neighborhood. Lives lost, homes leveled. The headlines fade, but victims are left asking who actually pays for the wreckage on the ground. Wait too long and black box data, maintenance logs, and witness accounts disappear, while insurers settle on their terms, not yours. In the next minutes, you'll see exactly which parties you can sue, the deadlines that forced fast action, and the evidence that wins cases. Stick around, and you'll know how to protect your family and claim every dollar the law allows, starting with why Florida's crowded skies raise the stakes for all of us. When you step onto an airplane, you're placing your trust in the complex system of pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers, and manufacturers. While flying remains statistically one of the safest forms of travel, airplane accidents do happen, and when they do, the consequences can be devastating. As someone who has spent years helping Florida families navigate the aftermath of aviation accidents, I want you to understand your rights and what you can expect if you or a loved one is ever involved in an airplane crash. Hi, I'm Doug Burnetti, and I've represented thousands of injured victims throughout the USA for the last 35 years. And as someone who has spent years helping Florida families navigate the aftermath of aviation accidents, I'm here to tell you, Florida is one of the busiest aviation states in the country. Orlando International Airport alone sees over 96,000 passengers every single day, with more than 35 million passengers passing through annually. That's 813 arrivals and departures daily, and those numbers are only growing. Miami International, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, and Jacksonville airports add tens of millions of more passengers to that count. With this volume comes risk. The Federal Aviation Administration projects that by 2030, we'll see over 1.2 billion passengers flying annually nationwide. While the overall safety record of commercial aviation is excellent, private aviation tells a different story. The accident rate for private aircraft has increased by 20% since year 2000. And with Florida's popularity for private jet travel among business executives and tourists, we see our share of these incidents. What many people don't realize is that airplane incidents don't just affect those on board. Crashes can impact people on the ground, in their homes, or businesses near airports. I've represented families whose loved ones were killed when aircraft crashed into residential areas, and property owners whose homes were destroyed by aviation accidents. The most common causes of aviation accidents. Understanding how airplane accidents happen is crucial to understanding your legal rights. In my experience handling these cases, pilot error remains the leading cause of aviation accidents, accounting for approximately 50% of all crashes. This can include everything from poor decision-making in bad weather to inadequate pre-flight preparation or failure to follow proper procedures. Mechanical failures represent another significant category. These can stem from design defects in the aircraft itself, manufacturing problems with specific components, or inadequate maintenance. I've handled cases where faulty engine components, defective landing gear, and improperly maintained control systems led to catastrophic incidents. Weather-related accidents often involve pilot error as well, but they deserve separate consideration. Florida's unpredictable weather patterns, including sudden thunderstorms, microbursts, and fog, create unique challenges for pilots. While modern aircraft are designed to handle severe weather, accidents still occur when pilots make poor decisions about flying into dangerous conditions. Air traffic control errors, though less common, can have devastating consequences. These might involve incorrect altitude assignments, failing to maintain proper separation between aircraft, or miscommunicating critical information to pilots. Finally, there are accidents caused by inadequate training, whether of pilots, mechanics, or other personnel involved in the aircraft operations. The aviation industry is heavily regulated, but training standards can vary, particularly in private aviation sector. Who can be held legally responsible? This is where aviation accident law becomes complex and why having experienced legal representation is so important. Unlike a typical car accident where you might be dealing with two drivers and their insurance companies, aviation incidents can involve multiple potentially liable parties. The airline itself may be liable under various theories. Airlines have what we call a common carrier duty to their passengers, which is an extremely high standard of care. They must use the utmost care and diligence for passenger safety. If an airline fails to meet the standard through inadequate pilot training, poor maintenance practices, or unsafe operation procedures, they can be held responsible for resulting injuries or deaths. Aircraft manufacturers can be liable when design defects or manufacturing flaws contribute to accidents. I've handled cases against aircraft manufacturers where defective components made aircraft unsafe. These cases often involve complex engineering analysis and expert testimony, but they can result in significant compensation for victims and their families. Component manufacturers may also bear responsibility. Modern aircraft contain thousands of components made by different manufacturers. When a defective engine, faulty navigation system, or defective landing gear cause an accident, the component manufacturer can be held liable even if they didn't build the entire aircraft. Maintenance companies and contractors represent another category of potential defendants. Airlines often contract with third-party companies for aircraft maintenance. If improper maintenance, use of defective parts, or failure to follow proper procedures contributes to an accident, these companies can be held responsible. Even government entities can sometimes be liable. If air traffic control errors or problems with airport design or maintenance contribute to an accident, federal or local governmental entities might bear some responsibility. The unique challenges of Florida aviation accident cases. Florida's aviation accident cases present unique legal challenges that require experienced representation. First, there's the question of jurisdiction. Aviation accidents often involve federal law, state law, and sometimes international law if foreign airlines or manufacturers are involved. The Federal Aviation Act, the Death on the High Seas Act, and the Montreal Convention may all apply depending on the circumstances of your case. Florida's comparative negligence law adds another layer of complexity. Under Florida Statute 768.81, if the victim bears some responsibility for the accident, their recovery can be reduced by their percentage of fault. However, in aviation cases, passengers rarely bear any responsibility for accidents, so this is less of a concern than in other types of personal injury cases. Time limitations are critical in aviation cases. Florida statute of limitations for personal injury claims is generally 4 years, but aviation cases may involve shorter time limits under federal law or international treaties. Also, Florida's new 2-year statute of limitations could possibly apply. The key is to act quickly to preserve evidence and protect your rights. Types of compensation available. The compensation available in aviation accidents can be substantial, reflecting the severity of injuries and losses typically involved. For injury cases, compensation may include medical expenses, both current and future. Aviation accidents often result in severe burns, traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and multiple fractures that require extensive medical treatment and rehabilitation. Lost wages and loss of earning capacity are significant components of many aviation accident cases. If your injuries prevent you from working or limit your ability to earn income in the future, you are entitled to compensation for these economic losses. Pain and suffering damages compensate for physical pain and emotional trauma you've endured. In aviation accident cases, these damages can be substantial given the severity of the typical injuries and the traumatic nature of aircraft accidents. For wrongful death cases, Florida Statute 768.21 allows recovery for funeral expenses, medical expenses related to the deceased's final injury, lost earnings, and benefits the deceased would have provided to survivors, and the loss of companionship, guidance, and support to the survivors. In cases involving young victims or high earners, these damages can reach into the millions of dollars. The investigation process and building your case. Aviation accident cases require immediate and thorough investigation. The National Transportation Safety Board, or sometimes referred to as the NTSB, typically investigates significant aviation accidents, and their findings can be crucial to your case. However, the NTSB investigation is focused on safety improvements, not necessarily determining legal liability, so you need independent investigation as well. Physical evidence from the crash site, witness statements, air traffic control recordings, weather data, maintenance records, and flight recording data information must all be preserved and analyzed. This requires working with aviation experts, accident reconstruction specialists, and other professionals who understand the technical aspects of aircraft operations. In one case I handled involving a private aircraft crash in South Florida, our investigation revealed that the aircraft's maintenance company had performed poor maintenance, and in fact, the poor maintenance led directly to the crash. If we had not performed the investigation and figured out how that poor maintenance caused the crash, there would have been no case. What to do if you're involved in an aviation accident? If you survive an aviation accident, your immediate priority should be getting medical attention, even if you don't think you're seriously injured. Adrenaline can mask injuries, and some conditions like traumatic brain injuries may not show symptoms immediately. Document everything you can remember about the accident while it's fresh in your memory. If you're able, take photographs of your injuries and any visible damage. Keep all medical records and bills related to your treatment. Don't give statements to insurance companies or sign any documents without consulting with an attorney first. Aviation accident cases are complex, and insurance companies will often try to minimize their exposure by getting victims to accept quick and adequate settlements. Contact an experienced aviation accident attorney as soon as possible. These cases require immediate attention to preserve evidence and protect your rights. The sooner we can begin investigating your case, the better chance we have of uncovering all the facts and holding the responsible parties accountable. Why experience matters in aviation cases. Aviation accident law is a highly specialized field that requires specific knowledge and experience. These cases involve complex federal regulations, technical aviation concepts, and often multiple defendants with substantial resources and experienced legal teams. I've spent years dealing with aviation law and working with aviation experts and building relationships with the proper professionals needed to investigate and present these cases. This experience allows me to identify all potential sources of liability and work with other professionals to build the strongest case possible for my clients. The insurance companies and corporate defendants in aviation cases have teams of experienced lawyers working to minimize their liability. You need an attorney who understands their tactics and has the resources to match their efforts. Your path forward. If you or a loved one has been involved in an aviation accident, you don't have to face the challenge alone. These cases are complex, but with proper legal representation, you can hold the responsible parties accountable and recover the compensation you deserve. Remember that aviation accidents often involve multiple potentially liability parties, from airlines and manufacturers to maintenance companies and component manufacturers. A thorough investigation is essential to identify all sources of compensation and build the strongest possible case. The legal system provides meaningful remedies for aviation accident victims, but you need experienced representation to navigate the complex legal landscape and protect your rights. Now, I've covered a lot of ground about aviation accidents and your legal rights, but there's another area of law that affects thousands of Floridians every year and requires immediate attention when it happens to you or someone you love. In my next video, I'm going to break down everything you need to know about defective drugs and your rights here in Florida. This is crucial information because pharmaceutical companies often know about dangerous side effects long before the public does, and if you've been harmed by a defective medication, there are specific time limits and legal requirements that could affect your ability to recover compensation. I'll walk you through exactly what constitutes a defective drug case, how to recognize it when you have a claim, and the steps you need to take to protect your rights. Don't wait on this one, because the statute of limitations in defective drug cases can be shorter than you might expect, and pharmaceutical companies have armies of lawyers working to limit their liability. See you over there.